Mr. Aubrey Norton, leader of the PNCR and chairman of the APNU, Mr. Lubumba Angoy, advisor, and Ms. Shanika Haynes, counselor, RDC4. Today's press statement will be read in two parts, and I now invite Mr. Norton to read the first.
Guyana's oil wealth must lift the lives of the people, not just enrich a few. A Partnership for National Unity is once again calling on the government of Guyana to stop governing through headlines and use of irrelevant statistics and start governing in the interests of the Guyanese people. Today, Guyana is earning billions of dollars from oil. It is one of the fastest growing economies in the world. Meanwhile, the life of most Guyanese is getting worse. In markets, villages, and communities across the country, people are saying that the economy may be booming, but the people are still struggling. People cannot even live from paycheck to paycheck. Young people are searching for jobs, and small businesses are under pressure. Unfortunately, this is what oil wealth means for the small man. A cash grant cannot replace real economic progress. The government has announced a $100,000 cash grant to citizens as if it forgot that it did not deliver the cash grant, the Christmas cash grant they promised. While the cash grant is welcome, it cannot take people out of poverty. APNU calls on the government to reallocate resources to help the poor and vulnerable, since cash grants will not generate generational wealth, as President Ali once said it would. The government will have to stop their show and genuinely put people first. A one-off payment does not fix the structural problems facing the country. The people of Guyana do not want temporary relief while the cost of living keeps rising. They want opportunity to become economically independent. They want security. They want a fair share of the wealth that belongs to all Guyanese. The cost of living crisis is real. Across the country, the complaints are the same. Food prices are rising steadily. Rent is increasing, and housing costs are unaffordable for many, especially public servants and retail workers. Land prices have exploded in many communities, and Guyanese cannot afford to buy. Teachers, nurses, public servants, small business owners, and young families and our elderly are feeling the price pressure every single day. APNU demands that the government gives all public servants at least 25% increase in wages and salaries. The people cannot live on the government celebrating economic growth while ignoring the daily reality faced by ordinary citizens. People need economic resources to deal with the high cost of living. Economic growth must mean better living standards, higher wages and salaries, affordable homes, greater opportunities, and a just society based on equity. If most Guyanese are not feeling the benefits of the oil boom, then something is fundamentally wrong with the way the country is managed, or to put it more accurately, mismanaged. Guyana's economic model is structured to enrich the government elite, their family, friends, and favorites. Voters are last and only have appeal when elections are coming.
Guyana cannot depend.
Thank you, Mr. Norton. I now invite Mr. Angoy to read the second part of the press statement.
Guyana cannot depend on oil alone. Oil production is expanding rapidly, and revenues will continue to grow, but oil alone cannot sustain the future of Guyana. The oil sector cannot provide jobs for most of our people. There needs to be job creation in the non-oil sectors of the economy. The present development path of the PPPC government will leave Guyana dangerously dependent on one sector while the rest of the economy stagnates. APNU believes oil revenues must be allocated in a way that builds and strengthens the real economy of Guyana. This means serious investment in agriculture and agro-processing, manufacturing and value-added industries, tourism and hospitality, fisheries and rural industries, small and medium-sized businesses, technology, innovation, and the orange economy. These are the sectors that create long-term jobs and sustainable growth. Only this approach will create a bright future for the youth of Guyana. The people must receive their fair share. The wealth flowing from Guyana's oil belongs to the people of Guyana. It does not belong to the government. It does not belong to political friends and contractors. It belongs to every citizen of this country. Most Guyanese know that the benefits of oil are not distributed fairly. There are growing concerns about transparency and accountability in the management of oil revenues, the oversight of the Natural Resource Fund, and whether national resources are being used in a way that truly helps the population. The people deserve full transparency and accountability. They deserve to know how the government will manage the wealth. Leadership requires responsibility. Please be reminded that oil is a finite resource. The decisions made now will shape the future of Guyana for generations. Responsible leadership requires balancing development today with saving for tomorrow. It requires building industries beyond oil. It requires lowering the cost of living and creating real jobs. It requires putting the people first. Unfortunately, this government is not doing that. APNU will continue to speak for the people. APNU stands firmly with the people of Guyana. We will continue to demand fair distribution of oil wealth across all regions, stronger transparency and oversight of the Natural Resource Fund, serious investment in non-oil sectors, policies that reduce the rising cost of living, real job creation for the people of this country, responsible management of our natural resources. Guyana has an extraordinary opportunity to develop and especially its people for the future using oil. But that opportunity will mean nothing if the lives of the ordinary Guyanese do not improve. The people of this country are not asking for handouts. They're asking for fairness. They're asking for opportunity. They're asking for leadership that puts the nation first. Unfortunately, they are not getting that leadership. APNU will continue to hold the government accountable until the wealth of Guyana truly works for all Guyanese.
Thank you, Mr. Angoy. I now invite questions from the media on today's press statement. I
Good
see.
morning, Adam Harris.
Go ahead, Mr. Harris.
The last comrade, I didn't really get his name, but he spoke about the oil revenue. Now, Dr. Terence Yahabe moved to the court to question the withdrawals from the Natural Resources Fund and its expenditure. That case ended months ago, and the decision has been postponed. Can anyone say what is the status of that matter now? When will the decision be handed down?
Well, Adam, you are well aware that that will fall within the purview of the judge. I don't know at this stage. I can ask Terence to check to see where it is.
Another question I want to ask. It has to do with Guyana's reaction to the Cuban doctors who have been the backbone of the medical industry, well, not industry, but the health services for as long as most people in Guyana have been alive. Exactly what is going on, Comrade Leader?
As I understand it, the government of the United States of America is contending that we should get rid of the Cuban workers. And the sole premise seems to be that the Cuban doctors are being exploited because a lot of the resources go to the government of Cuba rather than the doctors. But in handling this matter, one has to deal with it contextually. There was a time in this world when China, Cuba were not recognized by the United States of America. In the 1970s, beginning around 1970 and ultimately ending in 1972, the United States took the position that it needed to develop a rapprochement, an engagement with China. At the time, the embargo was still on Cuba and they didn't do it with Cuba. But you saw a rapprochement with China, you saw it with the Soviet Union. At that time, the then he was prime, didn't become president yet. The then Prime Minister of Ghana, Forbes Burnham, felt that, look, why is it that the United States could have a rapprochement with China, Russia, but then you couldn't with Cuba? And you're aware that 4 leaders in the Caribbean got together and recognized Cuba and China. And so from 1972, the Ghana government recognized Cuba. They would develop a number of programs with Cuba. One of them was the medical program, in which Cuba sent doctors and other medical personnel for Guyana. And through that collaboration, our system was helped. And not only Guyana's system, throughout the Caribbean, Cuba came to the assistance of us. In my opinion, therefore, we have some kind of a moral obligation to help the Cubans. And helping the Cubans doesn't make you anti-American. I believe if the Ghana government had taken a proper approach and deal with this matter as a proper foreign policy issue, they would have engaged the American government to say to them, look, we hear you on this question of the Cuban government utilizing a lot of the resources. But could we find a midway point in which we probably work to ensure that Cuban doctors get more, so that the issue of concern to you is dealt with, assuming that their stated position is the real position? In that situation, therefore, it follows logically to me that the government could have engaged the United States, take its position, and negotiate a solution. I am well aware that we welcome and appreciate the support of the United States of America to us as it relates to the Ghana-Venezuela territorial controversy. And we welcome that. And we should indicate that to them. But we should never put ourselves in a position where we become part and parcel of a mechanism that seeks to starve and destroy the Cuban society. The United States is a sovereign, powerful state, and it has its right to make decisions. But we as a small state must recognize that there are certain things that we are vulnerable to. And the time will come when we need other small states' solidarity. And to give up on the Cubans in the fashion we would have done doesn't speak a lot for us as a country that is a small state that is vulnerable. We also have to take into consideration that the United States as a government pursues its interests, and then the government changes, And in probably 3 years, you'll be in a different position. One, therefore, has to structure their foreign policy so that it is applicable across the board in various seasons. And so I do believe that there's a failure of the government to engage, negotiate, and protect our interests, because our interest also lies in us having the expertise and the support from the Cuban system to facilitate and help our health system. And so I'm of the view that the government has failed the people of Guyana by taking what they call a pragmatic position that might be pragmatic now, but opens or portends things that will affect us in the future.
Thank you. Are there any other questions on the
Sorry, a quick follow-up. As a political party leader, have you been in discussions with the Cuban, perhaps embassy, Cuban authorities, or anyone since this development?
We have been in contact with, I spoke with the Cuban ambassador, but it didn't focus on the relationship between Cuba and the American question. We spoke on broad issues. And in fact, I did not even say to the Cuban ambassador, what is my position on this issue? And he didn't ask.
But is he content that Guyana seems to have abrogated its relationship with Cuba in the medical services? Did that come up in your discussion?
No, it didn't. In fact, our discussion was kind of planned long before this issue emerged. And so it didn't come up, and the Cuban ambassador didn't express his views on that issue. We as a party arrived at our conclusion based on the historical and other facts at our disposal. You know, I want to say this, as a small state, we have to navigate this complex situation. Some of the claims is that Cuba is dictatorial, but you make the same claims against China. But China is an extremely large market that you need. So you will walk and tiptoe around China, but the blunt of it will come in a small state. And there is where my concern is. We're in this world, the odds are stacked against small states, and only if they develop some form of solidarity among them, they will be able to survive in this rough world. Because if you claim that you're fighting dictatorship, then you should be fighting it all around the world. In that case, Guyana might become questionable. Because for us, it's a dictatorship. We have been calling for biometrics and a clean voters list to ensure free and fair election. And we are not getting that. We are not having free and fair elections. We are having elections that are determined by a party list. In my opinion, it's only a change in the form of dictatorship.
One last question at this stage. Have the Cuban doctors left, or are they leaving? This arrangement, this talk about Guyana paying the Cubans for the medical service, do you have an idea how this was being done? How were we paying the Cuban government for the doctors?
I do not want to comment on it because I don't know the details. What I know in general terms is that the Cubans have a system, as they fight all the challenges they face, of utilizing their doctors, etc., in what I think they call it medical tourism. You have in this medical tourism where people can go to Cuba, get treatment as part of that package. And the Cuban government, based in collaboration with governments like Guyana, Jamaica, and so, will send doctors and they are paid for the services. The details I do not know.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Well, there are always questions.
Go ahead, Mr. Harris.
Currently, I would like to talk a little bit about, I don't know if this was mentioned in your opening statement because I managed to log in late, but local government elections are on the cards. How is the party working to have an impact on the local government elections? And there was talk about a lot of government expenditure on the municipal markets and all of that, but that isn't being seen. Can you say what's the relationship between the government and City Hall as it relates to the development of Georgetown?
Let's start with City Hall and the development of Georgetown. I do not believe that the government has an interest in the development of Georgetown. What a government has is an interest in appearing to do things to overshadow the city council and use it as an opportunity to get support and votes. We continue to make that clear to people so that they understand that whenever you see Manik Chan, is not somebody who's interested in your municipality or your NDC. It is somebody who is politically trying to win the support. And therefore, they must be clear in their minds that these are not people who are interested in Georgetown. We also make the point that if you look at the approach to local government, they suffocate all the NDCs, all the regions that they do not control. And therefore, that is also a manifestation of the fact that they're not interested in the development of those councils. What you see is the minister usurping the functions of the council. What you see is them using REOs and overseers to control and dominate the council, when in fact it is the council that should make the decisions and that the REOs and overseers, they implement. But they have developed a system that undermines local government. They have developed a system in which they appoint people to those positions who are loyal to the government and only act based on what the government says to them. And so they have transformed local government into a farce. We also need to make the point to people, and we'll make it extensively in the local government election, that the government is pursuing these regions, etc., because it wants to dominate and control the distribution of lands. If you look at what is happening in Region 6, in an NDC in which we are very strong and in fact right now have the majority of councillors, they are seeking to take away the lands in Firish and giving it to their supporters and leaving the African Guyanese community in Firish in a deplorable state. And so we have been saying, and I will say it throughout the campaign, the government interest is not in the promotion of local government and the people. The government interest is in controlling those local government authorities and then ensure that the lands there in the Georgetown, Linden, New Amsterdam, you name it, are distributed to their family, friends, and favorites. We don't have to go far. Every time I drive the so-called Heroes Highway because I think it's an insult to the heroes until they probably do it properly. But every time I drive that, I look and see the land in which they removed the African Guyanese at Mocha. They claim them that they were in the part of the road. Every child can see that they weren't in the part of the road. And if they wanted to change the argument to say they live in the area for expansion, they kill that argument because right opposite, they give one of the supporters the land and they put up a big property there. So you see clearly this thing is about domination. It's about control. And we have got to fight that and ensure we protect the interests of the people in those NDCs that we control, and even those in the PPP area, because they have problems that some of our councillors are helping with in terms of ensuring there isn't this total dominance and control. Because even in PPP NDCs, as the chairman and some of them run amok, the government comes in to help them and protect them against their very own supporters. So there is no interest in local democracy, meaning allowing the system to work and the people in the communities determine the use of their resources.
I don't know if on this point I can give an example. I'm at an NDC where it is governed by the PPP, and you have the council who should be able to make the decisions at that NDC, sitting in a room, making a decision, voting on it. And when that is passed, you have the overseer, like we talked about, persons working within the administrative system, heading over to the ministry and overriding what the council would have sat and decided on. So this is not just happening, you know, in other NDCs that are controlled by the APNU or PNC areas, but this is as well happening even in their own controlled areas, where all they're seeking to do, again, is to enrich their family, friends, and favorites. Because when the council sees something that is happening and it's wrong, and they speak up against it, whether it's in their council and you vote against it, they come in through the ministry end and overturn those decisions. So the government is not interested in a local government system, to reiterate what the leader is saying. Rather, they're there to see how much more they can control the system and what they can do to get more resources for themselves. Again, family, friends, and favorites. That's what we're seeing.
Thank you. I see the hand of Mr. Antonio Day. Mr. Day, please proceed with your question.
Good morning, everyone. Mr. Norton and everyone at the table. This things on the context of local government and development of the NDC. You are aware of the council that there are currently roads facilitating around the east coast of Demerara, which includes areas like Pleasant and Swift, just to name a few. What are your concerns? Because I recently, I'm not sure if you guys saw my story, but I interacted with vendors and business persons who lamented the slothfulness of the works and also the dust pollution. Your concern as a council, because I make to understand that these works have started since last year, and to date, they're taking long to be completed.
Thank you for the question. It is the same thing that is happening all over the country. The government is in the habit of not making proper plans for the works that they're doing. They would have started work in those areas. And of course, because the contracts are being given to specific persons, they're going ahead, they're giving that same person 4, 5, 6 contracts in different areas. And yes, because of that, works are being stopped in those areas, and the health issues, particularly on the East Coast and the area you're talking about, is increasing because, of course, the dust that you're facing with the trucks going in, with all the sand, the digging of the roads that they're doing. It's not just the environment that is bad, but it's also noise pollution that we're getting complaints at the NDCs for, in terms of the hours that the trucks are moving on the road as well. And, they're literally at your homes in this regard of how they're doing the expansion of the railway embankment. So there are lots of concerns, yes, in those areas, and the NDCs are facing complaints every day, particularly on the line top. And, we again can only call on the government to do what is right. If we have proper contractors who are going to do the work on time, they take into consideration the ordinary people, then we wouldn't have to be continue talking about these issues. But that's one of the problems. The government does not care about how it affects the ordinary people. They're not planning properly. So that's why we're having these issues.
If I may, Mr. Norton, good morning to you, sir. I take note of a very interesting job, per se, that you threw recently at the Ghana Day celebration, where you spoke about the internal, quote unquote, and citing from Star News, dated March 12. It says that Norton blames internal division for PNCR's SWP. Mr. Norton, just to explain, I would like to ask you, sir, given that you would have demonstrated a robust campaign in this the previous election, what are some of the mechanisms, or what are some of the things that you intend to do to change the current quote unquote internal division in the party in order for it to be effective?
Well, I would say there's not much we could do. The people who created the internal division are gone. They left on their own, so that we don't have to do anything. I know that there are some that are trying to instigate others, but it's minimal.
I'm talking about some, I'm not speaking about the ones who would have deflected. I'm speaking about the ones currently that you may know of that are trying to incite any form of trepidation in the party. What is your coping mechanism, and what do you intend to do to counter this?
First, I would say this. I think the people in the party are well aware of what they're up to. And so even though they have made attempts, many people in the party would have rebuffed them. You must also recognize that a lot of the people that left, I'm not talking about, or let me put this, a lot of people that would have left were people who did not have a history in the party. They came in 2020, they became members of parliament and other things without being in the party. And so they didn't have the kind of connection and affiliation that party people have over the period. And so that they are no longer there, I don't think there's need for a fight. There will always be people who disagree in a party, and we have no problem with that. We have forums that we could discuss and resolve the issues. We will continue to work to strengthen the party now that a lot of them are exposed for who they are. And my understanding is that even some of them who gone to other political parties, the political party leaders complaining how some of them lazy and some of the things that they do. But that's not our business. We're thankful that they took what we didn't want. Now, we are forging ahead, organizing our party. We believe that one of the critical areas that we have to deal with is social media, which is a relatively new dimension in politics, and we are going to deal with that. We also, like I said in Ghana Day, recognize that a lot of young people do not know what has happened, and so we are engaging young people and speaking to them about the history and the things that would have happened. I recall mentioning that I met a young person who didn't even know what was the Phantom Squad. And then somebody who I think lacks proper comprehension concluded that I said something that I actually didn't say. And I was happy that the people on Facebook took them on and replayed what I said. Because, one of the problems we face is that the so-called Facebook influencers don't have to deal with facts. They just put out information based on emotion. Is the reason for which I sue one of them. And that case, when it comes, we will deal with it. Because you cannot, it is good to use social media, but you cannot use it to perpetuate lies and dishonesty and scandal and smear people. And that is where that is heading. And so at least those in our jurisdiction will deal with them. At least I will once they smear me like some of them did.
Thank you.
Mr. Norton, and lastly, would you be able to provide an update on if there has been any meeting with the Ghana Elections Commission? Because I was made to understand that the Reinvesting Nationhood wants to take the matter to court regarding the current the current chief commissioners rather. They're taking to take this matter to court. Would you be able to provide any
Who wants to take the matter to court?
The We Invest in Nationhood, they are intending to take the matter to court regarding the constitutionality of the chief commissioners.
I would say that they are entitled to take it to court. I recognize a lack of sapience in their approach, but I wouldn't bother over that. I will wait and see what happens. We believe our commissioners are on strong grounds legally, and they are free to go to court. It's their right. What I find interesting is that a lot of what people are willing to go to court when is more self-interest rather than the interest of the Guyanese people.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Yes, Harry.
Yes, Mr. Harris.
Sir, many people are getting the impression that the PNC must now fight two political parties, the PPP and WIN. Do you see it in the same light, or do you see WIN as a member of the political opposition?
First, let me say this. Our task is to represent the people who have elected us and the wider Guyanese society. And therefore, what is necessary to do that will be done. There are times when, if the government makes a decision that we think is positive, we will support it. If we believe that we need to be united as an opposition on issues, we will work with all the parties in opposition. But it cannot miss us that a lot of what is pushed are more a personal agenda than representing the people of Guyana. We are well prepared to represent the people of Guyana and work with the opposition and civil society to represent the people of Guyana. What is not going to happen is that we're not going to be pulled in on any matter we believe is not in the interest of the people of Guyana. People must fight their own personal battles personally. We have been around as a party very long, and we know to draw a distinction between when the people are being represented and when people pursue their own self-interest. And if, for instance, WIN decides that they want to lead a high cost of living protests, we have no problem in supporting them because high cost of living is an issue. We have held a number of protests over the period on high cost of living, meetings, etc. Those things we are prepared to work and collaborate in. We do not see individuals here. We see the interests of the people of Guyana, and that is what we will do, represent them and pursue their interests, regardless of who. However, while we can have confluence of interests, it doesn't follow that we are a coalition. And I think what some people are suggesting is that we become a coalition. If going forward, we believe that the other political parties are pursuing their interests and we need to work towards a coalition, we have no problem with that. But for now, we will operate on the confluence of interests and represent the people of Guyana.
Thank you. you. Are there any other questions at this time?
Yeah, one is the AFC, the lines of change doesn't appear on the political landscape at this point. But, sir, are you in discussion with the AFC about a possible union in the future?
Not to my knowledge. I know that there are some people in the APNU that are talking with them, but as it relates to an approach of our party to theirs, no, there has not been such an approach. We believe all political party makes the decision, and when they make it, they must face the consequences. We also believe that down the road, we need to be united to defeat the PPP. But we also believe that whatever coalition we come up with must reflect the strength of the people involved, or the absence of strength too.
Any other questions?
Yes, a comment. A comment. I noticed that the government has made a lot of talk about distribution of cash grant, as if to say, well, they were talking about we are doing the cash granting. Are you satisfied with the manner in which this cash grant approach is being pursued, sir?
You know, the PPP government is an interesting phenomenon. We advocated that the cash grant could be paid to public servants and so through their accounts. The PPP said no to it because at the time they wanted to get information to use the campaign, which they did, which again establishes that they are not somebody people who you can rely on for principle. The PPP said in its campaign that you will have a beautiful Christmas, you will get cash grant. They never delivered. They backtracked on it. Now, our position on cash grant is well known. The whole idea of cash transfers, as we call it, originated in some pronouncements made by the WPA. And after I became leader, we endorsed those and we were pushing for cash transfers. But we have always argued that cash transfer alone cannot take people out of poverty. Another 100,000 cannot take people out of poverty. What is going to take people out of poverty? People are going to be taken out of poverty when opportunities are created for them to develop. If we have, like we had argued, a national schools transportation system, almost immediately you remove the burden on parents finding transportation money. That will impact their income. It will mean increased income for them. We have argued that there is need for at least 2 hot meals at school so that children get the nutrition they need and the parents are relieved during Monday to Friday when they're in school of that burden. And so that will impact in a direct way. We have also advocated many other social measures that can take people out of poverty. If you look at the countries in which people were taken out of poverty, though people are very critical of China, China took a large percentage of its population out of poverty and did it quickly. If you look at the Scandinavian countries in which people were taken out of poverty and enjoy a high quality life, you see a well-structured social service system that deliver relief to people so that they can increase their income. But when you have a government that says, I cannot pay you more than 8% wages and salary increases, but you can waste more than that amount to corruption and general wastage, you are seeing a government that isn't prepared to take people out of poverty. In every budget debate I was involved in as opposition leader, when in those days you debated, what we did was to put measures in the public domain to ensure we can deal with poverty. The budgets that we are seeing allocate little or no resources to direct poverty reduction. And so it's as if the government is happy with their family, themselves, their friends, and the favorite benefiting, but the rest of the population can suffer. And so for us, cash transfer is a way of having the people share in the oil wealth. But that by itself cannot take people out of poverty. You have to do more in terms of promoting small businesses. You have to do more in terms of creating jobs that will pay a proper income. Only when those things are being done, we can talk about moving people out of poverty. And that is our approach to the issue.
On the issue of cash transfers, I think one of the things that we need to understand is that developing people requires systems. And the systems that the current government has for developing people, I think, we think they're deficient. You have a budget that has about 50% that focuses on infrastructure. But what is the job creation programming that the government has? What is the education development programming that the government has? That's done in a coordinated way. So you can see a projection in, let's say, 3 or 4 or 5 years that will create a certain amount of jobs through a combination of foreign direct investment, government investing in non-oil sectors, as well as the education programming that's needed to get people ready to move the country forward. So there's that structural element that needs to come in addition to the talk of cash transfers so that people can be moved forward. The public service is a key element for developing a country. And if we put more input into the public service in terms of a living wage, then it can actually work towards giving them some savings that they can talk about investing. But $100,000 will not generate any measure of generational wealth, as the president once stated.
And you have to recognize that the PPP believe in propaganda. They are not interested in development. If you look at their new approach, they are going in villages. I saw someone in Melanie talking about the roads in Melanie. Now, that approach will not develop Guyana. You can build the roads, but if you aren't developing the people, you are not going to develop Guyana. All the countries that experience significant development, a large percentage of the resources go to human development. And this government approach is very defective in this regard. They are a propaganda people who like to tell you about how much they invest in hospitals. But when you go to the hospital, you can't get service. They like to tell you, oh, we spend so much on roads. But when you go on the road, they got to spend more on it because the road done broken up. When they spend so much on schools, they say, oh, we invest so much money in education. They're talking about the building of schools. But have they done the work to ensure the school delivers the quality education that children need? In fact, some of the problems we have in the society now, some of the delinquency, etc., is a clear manifestation of the failure of the education system. I can't recall when in modern history of Guyana you are greeted with children in school with guns. Knife might have been 1 and 2 here and there. But this whole thing about guns is something that we need to be very careful with, because it's also a manifestation of the government putting weapons in the hands of people who aren't responsible, and they have virtually removed the criteria they had for getting guns. If you are wealthy now, it don't matter what mental defect or what you have, you can get a gun because you can pay. And so this thing of looking at things in isolation will generate problems for us. We have to have a comprehensive approach that allows us to address the many elements of the system that aren't going right.
Thank you. Mr. Day, I see your hand is risen. Please proceed.
Mr. Norton, you raised an interesting point with the surge of weapons from children in school. Did you recommend that there be a full prong approach in terms of monitoring? Like, whereas, because there's some schools, whereas some security guards do not have weapons on them or arm holders, they would just allow students to pass in. Do you think that this will have to be implemented in all of the schools so that it could be able to counter the trafficking or carrying of weapons from underage children?
No.
And if I can ask the second question, or you want to answer the first?
Let me deal with the first one. Clearly, if you are going to deal with the issue, you need a proper commission that looks into it and understand the sources of the problem. To just run to the school without a thorough analysis of what is happening. For instance, the role of the parent in this issue. Right now, there's a case in the United States where a parent is being charged. I think negligent homicide, I don't remember the exact, we call it. Now, that speaks to the fact that parents have a responsibility that if they are given a weapon, they should ensure it is properly secured. Now, let's take this case with a little boy. You catch him with a weapon. You probably deal with him, but there is no legal mechanism to deal with the parent that is responsible for it. And if you do a thorough analysis of it, you will see a lot of the problems that we face also have to do with parental control. It has to do with the fact that the school system remove corporal punishment, and I'm not saying there must be corporal punishment, but if you remove it, you should have had a thorough analysis of what you are going to replace it with to ensure social controls. When you have a situation where the teachers can't beat, but the children could beat the teacher, you are creating chaos. And so the thing has to be looked at thoroughly and then come up with measures. For instance, I believe this society evolved and corporal punishment was the key means of dealing with your children. You remove it at the wider level and you put nothing in place. You have a society in which there are single parents, a lot of single parents, and that parent has to work. And so the children can be left unattended. When in the APNU we were developing the early childhood education system, was clearly intended to prepare the child to go into school, but also to have a mechanism so that children can go and not be left attended. I would have liked to see unattended, sorry. I would have preferred to see in this budget much more early childhood centers that would allow us to train people to handle children. We train about 100 of them and open early childhood centers across the country so that you have people with the technical, the professional competence to deal with them. And then there's the wider issue of children are born to parents without parental skills. And we have not developed programs to give young parents the training they need to be proper parent. Because now, don't forget, the police go in if you abuse the child. But you have given that parent no other tools to use. What are they going to use? And then we saw the case of the social workers recently, where even some with professional training not living by the protocols. The society has to have clear protocols for these things, and people have got to act based on them or face the consequences. But we live in a society in which if you're close to the government, the police won't act. They can only act when you and the government fall out. And so people are developing in this society this approach that lawlessness is welcome. Lawlessness is the order of the day, and the people can get away with it. We need to have a proper mentoring system. We need to train a proper core of psychologists, social workers that can serve the society, especially children and the youth.
And I would like to add, in regards to directly answering Mr. Day's position with the security and their role at the school system, you have to take into consideration as well that the system itself doesn't allow certain parameters within for the children's safety, because even when teachers are doing searching of children's bag, it has to come under a certain procedure, and the ministry and the department has to be informed. So as the leader pointed out, it has to be clearly that it's not directed to specifically the security having this initial caretaker over the safety of the students, but it is involving all the stakeholders. And when you highlight these issues, especially to the ministry and to the officials, coming from the opposition, first of all, they deter it, because they say we're only trying to be cantankerous when we're trying to bring a solution to existing problem. And more so, they're giving a one-size-fits-all to every problem. So what solution they found for one part, for the issue of the same idea, they apply it across the board. And when they deal with that matter, it is just swept under the carpet and left. In this same situation with this child, you have the child would have indicated that he brought the weapon because he was angry at the teacher. Was it the student? Was this matter taken by welfare to determine what caused the anger? Was it discrepancy on the teacher part? Was it discrepancy on the student part? Is the child given proper counseling? And then they will argue and say, yes, they have counselors in schools, but it's always going to be quality over quantity. How trained are these persons to deal with particular issues? You've had several instances where these same counselors leak information of students. That's a violation of confidentiality. Who will then go now to monitor to ensure that they're doing it? So the thing that has to be done is that the ministry has staff that operates for different parameters. You have welfare officers who look after particular issues. You have persons who observe teachers and everything. It is therefore the mandate of the ministry to not only make these visits whenever these issues arrive, to stop being reactive, but to be more proactive, and to monitor situations and to dissect it, not only of what you see at the front, but to see what are the underlying issues, because sometimes you will realize that it is a far bigger problem that exists, and then sometimes if you allow it to be pacified, it might reach a stage where we might even lose somebody's life in that case.
You know, I want to tell you a story that I experienced years ago. There was this young woman beating her child going down the road. And I stopped her and asked her, why are you beating this child like this? And she said, I tell this child I ain't got no money for send you to school party. But I don't know if it's a girl or a boy. So send the child to school party. And they keep molesting me. So I beat him. Now, at the base of a lot of these are the economic problems. And so we can address the social problems. But we also have got to address the economic problem that produces stress in the society that affects single parents and parents generally. and result in the kind of abuse that we see.
Thank you. Mr. Day, you said you had another question. Please proceed.
Yes, my last question. Mr. Norton, you referenced China, which has a socialist market economy, and their population currently, based on my research, is at 1.4 billion. And they, based on my research as well, they took like 800 million people out of poverty. I say this to say, what economic model do you recommend Guyana to have so that our citizens of this country, which is less than a billion, apparently, is going to have a sustainable life? My last question.
Unfortunately, I tend to be what they call eclectic, where you select that which is appropriate and utilize it. I don't believe any model will fit every country. You have to look at the country, understand its problems, and address the issues. If you study China, China went into villages, identified the problems, and then used what we would call region, but the local people to help deal with the problem, and at the same time, identify the infrastructure and other needs of the society. And they were able to work on poverty. There are other countries that found that a lot of their problems stem from the economic situation. And they did things like raising wages and salaries, giving incentives. You have got to look at the particular situation in Guyana and develop mechanisms to deal with it. What might apply in Linden might not apply in Georgetown. What may apply in urban areas will not necessarily apply in rural areas. Take the Rupununi. If you go across the board with poverty reduction, you will run into problems. The Rupununi has specific problems that if you're going to reduce poverty, you have to deal with. And I've always argued that one of the key problems they have is no water in drought and excess water when it rains. And therefore, you have to develop mechanisms to store water, reservoir, and you have to put significant resources into drainage and irrigation, or else you will not address the key problems to be able to create business and get them involved. So I would not recommend a model. I would say, let us be eclectic. Let us look at all the models, look at Guyana, and select that which is suitable to our country. There is no way we are going to be able to take a system, lock, stock, and barrel from a country or a community and put it in Guyana. First of all, the societies evolve differently. And you'll have to look at the evolution of the society and its problems and address the problem. So far, I haven't heard of any gun issues in Region 9. So if you take that approach and you apply it to all, you might be introducing something to regions that are very careful and work on developing a system. Also, there will have to be constant evaluation based on feedback and adapting. One of the things we do badly is we implement something and we don't check to see its positive, its negatives, and to tweak it to suit the extant situation. I will recommend that kind of approach, which demands a lot of professional and more competent people than we see the government engage in.
If I could add, one of the things that you can do in Guyana's context to take people out of poverty is to move from the extraction that we do and try to get the value adding. We have bauxite, for example, that if value added can create more jobs. We have gold and diamond. We have timber resources. Those things, if they're value added, creates jobs. And when you create jobs, you have the opportunity to move people out of poverty. So it's about having a view of where you want to go, and then you work a plan that allows you to get there. Some people say that China plans for 100 years. And as a result of that, they implement policies, it's methodical, and they get it done. We seem to have a hodgepodge approach. Like take, for example, agriculture. We have shade houses all around the place, and when you pass them, initially they're all good. And then after the end of the first or second crop, the shade house is in tatters and it's overgrown in bush and stuff like that. So what is the policy that drove the creation of the shade house? What is the, like Lida said, what is the aspect of that policy that focuses on monitoring? Because if you give me a shade house, for example, and you don't bring your extension officers to check up on me and give me guidance as to how to improve what I'm doing, then it's a squandered opportunity. So you have to have a long view and you have to have a short view, but you have to combine it. But we need to build the economic structure of Guyana based on its resources and the advantages that it has and the advantages that it can create. And there's another element of our development that we need to pay attention to. We're stuck on the coast. We're stuck on the coast. There's so much more of the resources in this country that are further south. And if we expand, we solve many problems at the same time. There's traffic alleviation. There's new opportunities for job creation. There's new opportunities for residential utilization. There's new opportunities for commercial spaces. So we can definitely build an economy if we have the right central focus, the right thought process, and the right execution.
I recall both in Parliament and in our manifesto, we virtually said that you need to train more agri-assistants to help people in agriculture because they need help. I plant at home, and I can give you an example. I plant at home. For 4 to 5 years, I plant in drums, very few things on the ground. I got good celery production without any problems. And then suddenly, the root of the celery starts to die. And there is no agricultural assistant on the East Coast that you can go to. I had to find agri people to talk to and go on YouTube and find solutions. If you do not have a system to support agriculture, you're in problems. But then there's no genuine interest. This government inherited from the PNC government a self-sufficiency in poultry in 1992. Whether they want to accept it or not, it was a fact. But there are elements in the government that are now facilitating the importation of chicken. I got a beef is now on the list. Pork is now on the list. Rather than putting the resources into agriculture in Ghana so that agriculture could develop and train the people to help those in agriculture. And when you look at the government approach, you see clearly they are looking at wealth now for themselves. They are not looking down the line to a better Guyana. Why would you encourage the importation of chicken and pork when you have the land, you have the people, you can train them, you can facilitate them, and allow them to develop. Even our cash crops should have been expanding with the coming of Exxon. And I said this many times. With Exxon and others people come in, there's going to be a pressure on the agricultural produce you produce, and therefore you need to be expanding agriculture. But the government doesn't want to expand agriculture. Let me tell you why. And I said this to the Minister of Finance years ago. You want agriculture to stay in regions 2, 3, parts of 4, 5, and 6, which are the regions you control. But you are not expanding it at the rate that it should be expanded in regions 1, 8, 9, and 10. Because in your opinion, you will lose control. So they lack the political will to make the decisions to make this country develop and develop in a balanced way. You know, let me make one last point. When you want to understand this government, I hold no brief for hits and jams or any one of them. I hold no brief for them. But when this government came to power first, and you had entities like Kashif and Shanghai, and we boycotted them one time because they become over political, and we have no apologies for that. You have hits and jams. What you are seeing is the government taking away those activities from what is considered the private sector and now controlling it and dominating it. So that an area that was teamed with development for the private sector and for mainly Afro-Guyanese, whether they like it or not, you are seeing the government virtually taking it away and dominating the area. I saw the Minister of Youth, Sport and Culture trying to suggest that Mackenzie Sports Club belongs to the government. I born and grew in Linden. I can tell him it was never the government property. It was always the property of the people of Linden, particularly Mackenzie. I am a member of that club. And I said to some people, we will have to take them to court on this issue. Because in the first place, they should have, no problem with them developing it. It should have been developed with the permission of the Mackenzie Sports Club. And it should be handed back to the Mackenzie Sports Club after its development. But no, they want to dominate and control everything. Now, Linden is a predominantly football playing community, but you put a focus on cricket. What are you saying to the people in Linden? The swimming pool that was there was probably the only public swimming pool owned by, I think, the YMCA or YWCA. You damage it. And you leave a community that has always done well in swimming without those facilities. When you see the government's approach, you know the focus is not on the development of the people.
One quick question, sir. A couple of years ago, the government hired that company to repair and to upgrade City Hall. I think it was $800 and something million. Can you say what is happening? It seems as though the work stopped, City Hall continues to deteriorate, and it continues to be the headquarters of the Georgetown municipality.
I don't know the latest position. I know the contract was awarded. I know work had begun, but I've noticed that it would have stopped. I can engage the mayor to find out what is the present position. But it's again a manifestation of the government's approach to local government. And that is where the focus has to be.
Any other questions at this time? That concludes today's press conference. I want to thank you for joining and for your respective respectful participation. Do have an enjoyable weekend. Thank you.